Welcome, everyone. You're listening to Exposing the Truth in the Digital Evidence. This is a special deep dive, really tailored for you, the students at the Dr. Sam Pack College of Business. That's right, if you're in the BBA, Management Information Systems, BAS in Information Technology, or the BS in Computer Information Systems programs, especially focusing on computer forensics, this one's for you. Today, we are really diving into Chapter 9 of Nilsson and Stewart's Guide to Computer Forensics and Investigations, 6th edition. It's all about digital forensics analysis and validation. Yeah, our mission today is basically to arm you with those key concepts, the insights you'll definitely need. Think of this as your essential guide to how experts approach digital evidence.
How they validate it, how they uncover that hidden information. It's crucial stuff.
Exactly. We'll look at applying forensic skills, using hashing, refining investigation plans.
Oh, and detecting those sneaky data hiding techniques. It's going to be fascinating.
It really gets into the detective work side of things. Totally. And hey, before we jump in, if you find this helpful for your coursework, please, hit like, subscribe, follow us, maybe share it with classmates.
And leave a comment. Your engagement really does help us create more content like this.
Okay, let's get started. Imagine this scenario. You're handling a big case, maybe industrial espionage. Blueprints walked out the digital door. Where do you even begin? What's that initial scope?
Right, the scope. That's foundational. It really depends. For criminal cases, the search warrant dictates everything. It tells you exactly what data you're allowed to look for.
And for civil cases?
There, it's usually court orders for discovery. They set the boundaries. You can't just go on a fishing expedition.
Makes sense. And then there's the dreaded scope creep. I hear that term in project management all the time. Sounds like something you really want to avoid here.
Oh, absolutely. Scope creep in forensics happens when your investigation starts ballooning beyond what you initially set out to do. Maybe you find unexpected evidence.
Like something totally unrelated but still illegal.
Exactly. Or just leads that pull you in different directions. While sometimes you have to follow those leads, it massively increases the time, the resources.
For extraction, analysis, presenting it all, yeah, I can see that.
It can really derail things if you're not careful.
So how do you manage that?
Yeah.
Especially with different kinds of cases, like, say, comparing an email harassment complaint to that big industrial espionage case. They must feel totally different.
They are very different. An email case might be internal, governed by company policy, unless law enforcement gets involved. Then it's civil or criminal rules.
And industrial espionage.
That can be incredibly labor-intensive. Huge amounts of data, tracing actions across networks, maybe even internationally. But the core principle is the same. Maintain control of the evidence, chain of custody.
Meticulous documentation, too, I imagine.
Oh, absolutely critical. Every single step. And for private sector cases, you really need to refine that plan. Broad enough to find what you need, but efficient. You can't afford to waste time or money chasing ghosts.
Okay, so you've collected the data, you've managed the scope. Now, validation. How do we know the data is good? Why is this so incredibly important, especially if it's heading to court?
Validating data integrity. Honestly, it's one of the absolute pillars of digital forensics. You have to prove, beyond doubt, that the evidence you're presenting is exactly what you collected. No changes.
No alterations, accidental or otherwise.
Precisely. That confirmation process is what we call validating. It's about trust. If you can't prove integrity, that evidence could be deemed inadmissible. Game over.
Right. Now, this is where I find it gets really interesting. You mentioned sometimes standard tools have limits for detailed hashing, and that's where advanced hexadecimal editors come in. What makes them so, special?
Hex editors offer, let's call it surgical precision. Standard tools might hash a whole file or a whole partition, but what if you need the hash of just a few specific sectors or one particular file fragment?
Ah, okay. For really granular stuff.
Exactly. An advanced hex editor lets you do that. It can often be faster and much more precise for getting those specific hash values. Say you suspect a deleted file fragment matches a known illicit file.
You can hash just that fragment.
Yes, and prove that specific piece of data was there. That level of precision can be incredibly powerful in court. And building on that, there's a technique called blockwise hashing. This is really useful.
Okay, what's that?
You basically create a database of hashes from, say, every sector of an original known file. Then you scan the suspect drive, calculating hashes for its sectors, and look for matches.
So even if the file is deleted or fragmented?
If you find sectors on the suspect drive with hash values matching sectors from the original file, you've got strong evidence that file or parts of it were stored there. It helps reconstruct things.
Like putting together a digital puzzle. That's clever. But what about the big forensic suites? Do they have good validation features built in? How do they handle all the different file systems?
Oh, definitely. Tools like Autopsy, for example, are designed for this. They can analyze a huge range of file systems: Microsoft, FAT, NTFS, XPET.
Linux.
Yep, Mac HFS plus Linux, X22, XT3, XT4. It needs to understand how all these different systems store data, metadata, even deleted file information. Autopsy can also handle raw images, expert witness formats, virtual machine files.
Like .VDI or .VHD?
Exactly. And crucially for validation, Autopsy integrates with the NIST National Software Reference Library, the NSRL.
That's the database of known software hashes.
Right. MD5 hashes typically lets you quickly filter out standard operating system files, known good stuff, save a lot of time. Access Data FTK Imager is similar. When you create an image in Expert Witness or Smart format, it gives you the option to hash everything. It generates a report with both MD5 and SHA-1 values.
So MD5 and SHA-1, they're like digital fingerprints, right? Can you quickly explain what they are and maybe why you'd use one over the other?
Good question. They're cryptographic hash functions. You feed data in, any amount, and get a fixed size output, string the hash. Change one bit of the input, and the output hash changes completely.
A unique fingerprint.
Essentially, yes. MD5 gives a 128-bit hash, SHA-1 a 160-bit one. They're designed to be one-way, you can't reverse them, and collision-resistant, meaning it's incredibly hard to find two different inputs that produce the same hash.
But I've heard MD5 has issues.
It does. Known collision vulnerabilities exist for MD5. It's theoretically possible, though difficult, to create two different files with the same MD5 hash.
So for court.
For high-stakes situations, using stronger algorithms like SHA-1 or even better SHA-256 is generally recommended. It provides a more robust defense against challenges that the evidence might have been tampered with.
Makes sense. You mentioned Access Data also has something called KFF.
Right, the known file filter. It's their database of hashes for known legitimate files and known illicit files, like contraband. Helps you quickly identify or filter data. Autopsy has a similar tool, the EO1 verifier, specifically for checking the integrity of expert witness image files.
Okay, so you've validated everything meticulously. But what if the person you're investigating tried really hard to hide the data? Back to our espionage case, they definitely try to cover their tracks.
Yeah.
What are common data hiding techniques?
The cat and mouse game. Yes, data hiding is all about changing or manipulating files or systems to conceal information. And the techniques, they run the gamut.
Simple stuff to complex.
Exactly. Hiding whole partitions, changing file extensions, that's a basic one, setting file attributes to hidden. Then you get into more advanced things like bit shifting, using encryption, password protection.
Let's unpack some of those. Hiding files just using the OS. Like changing the extension.
Yeah, changing, say, a .docs to a .dll. Seems simple, but most good forensic tools don't just rely on the extension. They look at the file header.
The internal signature that says what the file really is.
Precisely. A JPEG file starts with specific bytes. A PDF starts with others. If the header says JPEG but the extension is .txt, the tool flags it. Big red flag for concealment.
And basic stuff like just setting the hidden attribute.
Tools find those easily. Investigators should always make sure they've enabled viewing hidden files and system files anyway, but the forensic software picks them up regardless.
Okay, what about hiding? Like a whole partition? That sounds harder to spot?
It can be. Using tools like Windows Disk Part, someone can hide or unallocate a partition. The key for the investigator is accounting for all the disk space.
So if the drive is 1 TB, but you only see 900 gigabytes in partitions,
that missing 100 gigabyte is highly suspicious. Forensic tools and hex editors can access that unaccounted for space and see what's there. Might be a hidden partition with incriminating data.
Right. You also mentioned an older trick marking bad clusters. Is that still a thing?
Less common now, definitely more of a DOS-era technique. The idea was to put data in free space or slack space on a cluster, then use a utility, like Norton Diskette back in the day, to mark that cluster as bad.
So the OS would just skip over it.
Exactly. You'd need special tools like old DOS disk editors to actually see the data. It's historically interesting and a reminder that old tricks can sometimes resurface, but not something you see often with modern systems.
Okay, this brings us to the really sophisticated stuff. What about bit shifting? Or steganography? These sound tough to crack.
They're definitely more advanced. Bit shifting is clever. It changes the data at the bit level, basically scrambling readable code or text into something that looks like binary noise or executable code.
So standard text searches wouldn't find it?
Nope. And some malware uses it to hide from antivirus scanners. You need tools that analyze raw data, look for statistical anomalies, maybe even try to emulate code execution to see what it does.
And steganography, hiding data inside other files.
Classic technique. It's a form of cryptography, really. You embed your secret message within an innocuous-looking cover file, usually an image, audio, or video file.
So the file still looks or sounds normal.
To the casual observer, yes. The changes are often mathematically subtle. Imagine those stolen blueprints hidden inside a family photo. Detecting it requires stig analysis.
How does that work?
Various methods. You might analyze the statistical properties of the file, looking for patterns inconsistent with a normal image or audio file, stego-only attack. Or, if you happen to have the original cover file, you can compare it to the suspect file, known cover attack. It requires specialized tools and expertise.
Wow. Okay, then the ultimate shield, encryption. If files are strongly encrypted, how hard is it to get that data back?
Extremely hard. If someone used strong encryption, like PGP or Veracrypt, with a good passphrase, cracking it through brute force is often computationally infeasible.
Meaning it would take, like, centuries.
Potentially, yes. The resources needed are immense, usually beyond what most organizations have. Key escrow systems exist, where keys are stored securely, but they aren't always used.
So what's the most practical approach?
Honestly, often it's finding a legal way to compel the suspect to provide the password or passphrase. It sounds simple, but it's frequently the only viable path.
Right. But if you can't get the password, what about cracking it? What tools or techniques exist?
There are specialized password cracking tools. Some are built into forensic suites like OSIS Forensics. Others are standalone tools like John the Ripper, Hashcat, Access Data PRTK, Passware.
How do they work? Do they need the actual password file?
Typically, yes. You need to extract the password hashes from the system or work directly on a disk image. Then the tools try to crack those hashes. They mainly use two methods. One is a dictionary attack, trying words, phrases, common passwords from lists. You can often tailor these lists based on what you know about the suspect.
And the other, brute force, trying every single possible combination of characters. Much slower, much more resource-intensive, but necessary if dictionary attacks fail.
I've also heard about rainbow tables. Are those still effective?
Ah, rainbow tables. They used to be very effective. They're basically huge, pre-computed lookup tables of passwords and their corresponding hashes. Find the hash, look it up, get the password.
But something changed.
Yes, salting passwords. This is a huge improvement. Before hashing a password, the system adds a unique random string, the salt, to it.
So even if two people have the same password,
their salted hashes will be different because the salts are different. This makes pre-computed rainbow tables pretty much useless against salted hashes. You're forced back to dictionary or brute force attacks on individual hashes. Much better security.
Okay, wow. So pulling this all together, what's the big takeaway for you, our listeners, heading into this field?
This chapter, Digital Forensics Analysis and Validation, really covers a lot of ground.
It really does. And the key takeaway is the sheer complexity and the absolute need for critical thinking and meticulousness. Everything from understanding the scope
to validating data with hashing and maybe hex editors,
to recognizing those data hiding techniques, whether it's simple extensions or complex steganography or bit shifting,
and tackling encryption and password recovery. Every single piece is vital for, well, exposing the truth in digital evidence.
Exactly. It's not just about finding data. It's about validating it, preserving it, and being able to explain it clearly and defend it under scrutiny. That's what makes an effective digital forensics investigator. Your grasp of these concepts, that's your foundation.
Couldn't agree more. A massive thank you to all of you listening, especially the Dr. Sam Pack College of Business students. We really hope this deep dive has given you some valuable context for your studies.
Hope it was helpful.
And before we wrap up, we've got a question for you. Thinking about all those data hiding methods, changing extensions, hidden partitions, bit shifting, steganography, encryption, which one do you think would be the most challenging to actually detect in a real investigation, and why?
Yeah, curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Drop your answers in the comments. We'd love to see what you think. And please, if you enjoyed this and found it useful, remember to like, subscribe, follow, maybe share it around, and comment. It really helps us keep exposing the truth and the digital evidence going.
Thanks for tuning in.
We look forward to diving deep with you again next time.